Man, I got a haircut. Looks pretty good. Finally, I was overdue. Must say.
Oh, you did?
Can't you tell? Anyway.
He's also wearing garbage as clothes, so.
A great shirt that I'm wearing. Just happens to have a big hole in the elbow. Some added ventilation. Cast Iron Brains, a podcast with just one host who has still yet to fall ill with the COVID-19 coronavirus, a feat of such impressive immunological supremacy that only one valid conclusion can possibly be reached.
Yes! I am invincible!
My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah. Here we are. Lori's here, too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
I have some things to say.
Lori has some things to say. Tonight is Monday, March 27th, 2023. Last week, we silenced female voices by not having the COVID-infected Lori on the program. But she's back tonight, and she's got things to say, Laura, so go right ahead.
Okay. So I listened to your fucking boring podcast.
No, you didn't.
And
that's a lie. Did. I had to hector you about it in order to get you to listen to it.
So you had to get me to listen to the whole thing. We are never getting rid of YouTube TV unless something better comes along that's just the same. And just that you went on as though it was a possibility before you checked yourself, before saying, like, oh, this is ridiculous. But, like, absolutely fucking not.
You could cancel it for 2 months and not even notice.
You could get a job.
Yeah, but it could be. This is the thing that always drives me crazy.
Oh, that drives you crazy.
I would notice getting a job. Everyone would notice that I got a job. Rest assured. But
I would notice.
If we canceled YouTube TV for the next 2 months, I really don't think you would even notice. I don't know. What would you miss? You don't even know.
I was at my mom's house and I was able to just log into my YouTube TV.
Is that going to happen again?
I was in a hotel last weekend and I was able to log into my YouTube TV.
Yes, but why? What did you watch? You spent the week with coronavirus. Jesus fucking Christ. I'll bet you that's on Hulu, first of all. Secondly.
Okay, and like I said, if you want to switch to something that's the same, that's different. That's not the same.
No. I mean, it's on like Hulu garbage for $7 a month that we pay, not $75 a month. Anyway. Go ahead.
Shut up. Basketball is a bad game. That's the problem with basketball. It went on too long. That was a long conversation that should have ended at basketball sucks.
Disagree. Right amount of time spent discussing basketball.
And my day 1 was Monday, so Monday was my day 7. You were mischaracterizing me.
Did the math wrong?
You did the math wrong.
No, what I said that I was on 5 or 6 on your Monday.
Fine,
that's what we were discussing.
You didn't remember exactly when I started feeling bad, and you shouldn't, but here I am remembering. And also, yeah, how dare you guys talk about the DC sniper without me around? That sucked.
We didn't discuss it.
I was in the car today on the way from getting blood taken at the doctor to go to work, and I was like so mad at what I was hearing because, yeah.
This is why I don't care about getting feedback about the podcast, because it doesn't feel great.
This is good
when it happens. This is a mistake that I've been making, thinking that I wanted feedback about my podcast all this time. I'm glad you didn't listen. Never mind.
Yeah, trimming some fat is always welcome and constructive feedback, you know.
I clearly listened.
Disagree.
I think I just proved that I listened.
2 hours and 15 minutes is perfectly acceptable amount of time for a weekly podcast, given the amount of quality that's crammed in there and all of the preparation that we do to make sure this works. When I go to our mutual show note, it's supposed to have the stories of the week to talk about, and it hasn't been updated since like September of last year or something like that. Whenever.
Anyway, Abe asked how I was feeling.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling really fine now.
Lori's fine.
Nice.
Like nothing ever happened. I didn't exercise for like 2 weeks, so that's not good. But I exercised today, so I feel better.
Oh, that's good.
The kids and I never got the goddamn virus. It was amazing. We are
Oh, that's great.
spectacularly lucky.
But
also,
he did start to feel sick.
I didn't feel great like last
He sounded like
Wednesday.
me. He sounded on Wednesday when I finally came home, like I sounded on Monday, where it was just like, ooh, not great. And then
scratchy throat, slightly run down,
Yeah.
and then I was fine.
And then Bob got to rest. Bob got to lay down at home and rest, where when I was in that state, I went to work a 10-hour day.
Oh, I see.
So that, that's the difference there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, sure, I rested. I think
I worked for 10 hours.
I lay prone for
talking to
an
people.
additional 2 hours of my life that I normally would not. Otherwise my schedule was exactly the same. And the amount of rest that does or does not include, I suppose, is up to everyone else's imagination and interpretation. But I turned out fine. And what ends up happening, because careful listeners of the show, of which there are many, will remember that I was worried about us missing bingo night at the school. The school had their PTO silent auction and bingo night. And my concern was that we were going to fall ill right before this big event. They haven't had it since 2019 because it's scheduled for this like third week in March every year, which you'll remember in 2020 was when shit got weird. And then the last couple of years, shit has still been weird enough to not do this, apparently. But we did it again this year. And on Thursday night, Calvin comes home from school that day and he's like, I got a bellyache. I was like, oh, great. And Thursday night at 10:30, he gets out of bed and he yaks all over in the toilet. He like a true champion, made it to the toilet.
What discipline?
Yeah, very well done by him. I had the foresight to put him in the guest room bed instead of let him sleep in his bunk bed, because if you're feeling pukey and you got to climb down from the bunk bed. It's
not a good mix.
It's an additional amount of work that might result in disgusting puke all over the carpet or something. So, good foresight by me. Good job by him puking in the toilet. But that probably meant that he wasn't going to he definitely wasn't going to school on Friday, and it probably meant that he was going to end up missing the fucking bingo night that he'd been so excited for so long. But he ended up being fine. Like, he puked, and then the next day he was basically fine. I kept him home from school anyway. And then by mid-afternoon, he was like sort of bouncing off the walls. So it was fine to bring him to the bingo night anyway. And we never tested.
Also on Friday? It was like later on that
Yeah,
same
it was
day?
a Friday evening thing.
Okay.
So it was fine. Raised like $8,500 for the PTO up there. Made a pretty penny for the...
No kidding.
Yeah.
Any fancy items?
The fanciest item, or the big ticket item every year, or at least the 2 years that I've been there, is a year of gigabit fiber internet from the local internet company that we actually use, this Ting company. They give away a year. The minimum bid starts at, I think, $200. And then as long as it stays under like $1,100, it's a value, right? So,
yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, granted, you are paying out a big fat pile of cash in the moment, but then you just don't pay your internet bill for the next year. It's for new and existing customers, obviously, and it goes for a large amount of money. And I bid $850 for it, and it was at that point I wasn't going any higher, because like $850 is a big pile of money to fork over all at once.
Have it.
But the money's just sitting in the checking account anyway, so like whatever. And then somebody ends up winning it. I think it ended up going for $901 or something like that. So
This may have been explained to me before, but I have forgot if so. How does it work with the silent auction?
Right. So it is a little weird, but basically they set up this. We set up all of these tables in the main sort of drag of the school, just in the main hallway there, and all of the different items are somehow presented. So if it's something like Ting Internet for 1 year, it's just a sign that Ting sent us that says, get Ting Internet for free for 1 year. And then below that on the table is a bid sheet. And it says minimum bid $200, and it's just a series of like 30 lines or whatever. And you write you get assigned a number. So I was number 162. so it's an anonymous thing. So you just write 162 and then you write your bid. And then the bid sheet will also say like what the minimum bid increase is. So for something like this Ting Internet for a year, it was a minimum bid increase of $25. Whereas the smaller ticket items like get pizza lunch with the third grade teacher was $10 starting bid, and then additional bids were $2 or something like that.
Okay.
Right? So,
Gotcha.
And by the way, when I went to $8.50, because I was the first bid, I bid $2.50 for it just to get the ball rolling on the internet for a year. It eventually goes up to like I said, my last bid was $8.50. And then I walk by, and some asshole has written $851 just to like this is not the Price is Right, you piece of shit. And like it's a minimum bid increase of $25. So like what are these shenanigans here? But then nobody touched it for a while, and we were getting near to the end. So I was like, on a technicality, I'm gonna win this at $8.50. They can't give it to this asshole. They wouldn't just bump
them to the next 25 or whatever next increment.
Man, I don't know. I would have thrown a fit though if they did. Obviously,
I was surprised that there's no one like milling about like ensuring that the increments are.
Well, that was part of the problem. Is that as a silent auction and bingo night volunteer, and therefore a sort of quasi official. It's sort of my job to like make sure that the rules are being followed. And as an interested party, how could I?
That is true. And you should have gone like I know it's anonymous. You should have tapped the guy that you're watching like a hawk the whole time. Say, hey, this $1 thing is nonsense. Go back and change it.
But somebody then bid $8.76, and then $9.01 I think was the final bid. So
they preserved the.
They eventually preserved it, but they ended up $1 off, like in a weird kind of way. So whatever, I guess.
Yeah, don't recognize that dollar nonsense.
Right. Ultimately, that's now shorted the auction for the PTO like $24 basically, right? Because there's a bogus bid in the middle.
Yeah, that was one false bid.
Anyway, it was fun and it was good, and my responsibility was to be the food truck wrangler, and the food trucks showed up on time and they all sold a bunch of food, so it was my end of it was successful and no COVID. And by the way, if Lori didn't give me COVID, I definitely am going to have ended up with COVID, because I was in the clear in terms of the Lori infection by that point. Like the kids had PCR tests. I had never tested positive. So I was out of the woods with that. And for the most part, I didn't feel overwhelmed by the presence of humanity at this thing. But then in the closing moments of this silent auction, when everybody gathers around all of the tables because the things that they want, because there's like, I don't know what it was. It was like nearly 100, probably 100 plus different items up for auction at this thing. And so the ones that they want, they're like watching like a hawk to sneak in there. And at the because we do the full countdown. It's like we got 5 minutes, we got 1 minute, and then they start counting down the like last 5 seconds or whatever.
But are people in these final minutes, are they outbidding each other? I mean, it would kind of defeat the whole number system. Like if I'm putting 850 and then you're like, oh, give me that pen.
It becomes a weird, like, a socially awkward thing where it's like I'm watching this bid sheet, but I'm not really watching it, because if the person thinks that I'm really watching it, then they're going to come in at the very last second and try to do something, right? And then of course it's like, it has to be officially highlighted off at the end so that somebody can't just grab the bid sheet and as though they've won it and then walk it up themselves to the auctioneer and say, yeah, this one was mine. Like, and then what they're really doing is they're writing down their number as they walk to the front there, and then to get the final bid on there. So it's like people start attacking these tables where all of the bid sheets are, and as a food truck wrangler and semi-official of this thing, I have to be like, hey, back off, everybody! I got the official highlighter here to make sure everything goes right. But anyway, the point is that like in that moment when it's like, there's 100 items there, and everybody is gathered in this. It's a fucking elementary school hallway, right? So it feels big when you're 6 years old.
Yeah,
but
for little.
But it's small for normal humans. It's not supposed to have 200 people in it all at once. And for the first time, basically, since this whole thing started, I felt, well, really the second time, because we did that stupid Christmas choir thing at the school this year. Felt like extremely claustrophobic. But anyway, that's just my own sort of weird antisocial behavior coming through, probably. But anyway, it was fun. It was a great success, and the kids didn't miss it, and that's what really matters.
What was the the proceeds going to? Like what?
School.
Just the school,
Yeah.
Just
the
general school.
the parent-teacher organization, which like steps in and tries to like if a teacher needs art supplies, or they need snacks or
Okay.
something, or like just to help the
Gotcha.
teachers close the gap between.
Funds the next year's silent auction.
Right.
That closes the gap between. You know, teachers are always talking about how they have to spend their own money on various things just to keep
Are
the
you
classroom
doubting that?
going.
People,
No, they
teachers
do.
are always saying they do.
No, I'm not denying it, but also like we
But
get.
they do say it.
They also say it, and also
the school doesn't provide it.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, but we also get emails home every week that's like, hey, we need some more dry erase markers. It's like, oh, come on with the dry erase markers and the goddamn snacks for all these kids all the time. I'm glad that the teachers don't have to do that. But also, that's what the PTO is for. It's
Yeah. No, that's good.
raised a big pile of money, and it was good. Poured myself a drink on Friday night, first time in a while.
After
and
the silent auction.
after the silent auction, because that, you know, Lori's been gone. I've been stressed out with all these people. Had a drink, and I did this thing that it's a very unpleasant task, and I'm only bringing this up because it relates to the Chat GPT stuff, the robots that are supposed to make
you
our
talked
lives
to your
better.
new wife.
Talk to my new wife.
Yeah, ChatGPT.
Oh, right. Lori thinks that only dudes talk. Briefly interrupting here. This is now Tuesday morning. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties here. We lost about 5 minutes worth of conversation. I was just about to say how Lori believes that only dudes mess around with these goofy AI chatbots, and that women don't do such things, or at least have not yet started to do such things. I don't know about that. Obviously, don't talk to many of the women about such things, but plausible, I suppose. Anyway, we go on to talk about how I was messing around with Google's new offering called Bard, which is available as one of these advanced AI chatbot things. And I was testing it against my experience with ChatGPT 3 from a couple months ago, playing the same Guess the Music video from the 90s based on my description of it. And what I found was that it was just as confidently wrong as ChatGPT 3 was a couple of months ago. So that's sort of what we're getting at in this 5-minute chunk of conversation that's missing, and it leads into the rest of the conversation. So apologies, but here we are. But it doesn't just do that about music videos. It does it about things like blog posts. So I asked it a question. I said, if I want you to analyze an essay or a blog on the internet, would you prefer that I cut and paste it into this chat here, or would you like a link? Like, and then you can can you then go out and read the link?
Right.
And it says, yeah, I can read the link, and I would prefer that. That will be faster. And I said, okay. I don't know why that would. In my head, I had no idea why that would be faster relative to me just copying and pasting some text into the thing there. But I'll take your word for it there. Google Bard, and so I sent it a link to an essay that I wrote some years back. And I was like, can you just summarize, like, what was the point of this? What were they getting at in this essay? And it just absolutely made some shit up as though it hadn't read a single word about it.
Like a dude.
Right.
Yes.
And I couldn't understand why. I was like, so, but you obviously didn't read the essay that was at the end of that link there. It's like, no, yeah, sometimes I make mistakes. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, but
Always falls back to that.
But
by the way.
can you read, if I send you a link, can you read the content at the other end of that link? And it says, no, I don't have the ability to do that. I was like, oh, fucking 45 seconds ago, you said just send me the link and I'll do that. So I was like, all right, fine. And I put the body of the essay then into the chat here, and then it did a reasonably good job of regurgitating the words back at me in succinct fashion, because that's what it's good at, right? Like effectively you feed it inputs and it sort of rejiggers them and spits them right back out at you, and that's sort of what it's good at. But it insists that it can do things that it cannot. So, and I'm like, I ask questions like, what do you know about the podcast Cast Iron Brains? And it has like this weird bare minimum amount of information. It knew without me telling it. It is hosted by Bob and Abe. But here's the first summary, and it will give you 3 different potential drafts. The way that Google Bard works is it will give you 3 options, or I don't know if it does it for every single answer that it gives you, but often enough it says, here are 3 different possibilities of what I came up with. So I said, what do you know about the podcast Cast Iron Brains? It says, Cast Iron Brains is a podcast about technology and the future. It is hosted by Bob and Abe, 2 friends who are passionate about technology and its potential to change the world. The podcast covers a wide range of topics, including artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and self-driving cars. So yes, I suppose we have done those things at various times in the past. It goes on. Bob and Abe are both experts in their field. It's like, what field is that?
There's the lie.
And they provide listeners with a unique perspective, on the latest technological developments. The podcast is informative and entertaining, and it is a great way to stay up to date on the latest technological advancements. I've listened to a few episodes of Cast Iron Brains, and I have enjoyed the show. Bob and Abe are both knowledgeable and articulate, racist, and they provide listeners with a lot of information. The podcast is also well produced, and the audio quality is excellent. It's a liar. It has not listened to anything. It's
yeah, that's not one of the functions of this robot, right? It can't listen to things.
Right. You can feed it a transcript, although don't put
Right.
that transcript at the other end of a website link. It will claim that it can read it, but it certainly cannot. So that was draft 1, and I clicked over to draft 2, and this is where it got a little weird because it says the following. Cast Iron Brains is a podcast about 2 friends who talk about a variety of topics, including current events, pop culture, and their own personal lives. All true. The podcast is hosted by Bob and Abe, who have been friends since they were kids. 22.
Kids.
Kids, I guess. Legally adults, but yeah, still
Yes.
youngish. They are both comedians and writers. And they use their humor and wit to make the podcast both entertaining and informative. Not sure we've ever informed anyone of anything. Right. The podcast has been praised for its honest and relatable conversations.
By the creator of the podcast.
And its ability to make complex topics easy to understand. I think mostly we just make things way more complex than they need to be, but that's a personal problem of my own. It has also been criticized for its sometimes vulgar language and its tendency to go off on tangents.
That's true, too.
Absolutely true.
Yeah.
Overall, CIB is a well-produced and entertaining podcast that is worth listening to. If you are looking for a podcast that will make you laugh and think, then Cast Iron Brains is a good choice. That was disconcertingly on the nose in some ways.
I do wonder, like maybe in like a year or so, it will get better, because right now it does not inspire a lot of confidence. You know, you put the robot through its paces. I do the same. I have 2 types of questions or prompts. One is, can you recreate my little known fact, little known fiction trivia?
Right.
The robot should be able to do trivia easily, right? And it doesn't do that well at all. It'll just make things up.
It just makes things up because all it's doing is guessing about what words it is that you want to see it do. It doesn't care about the factual reality behind it. So it asserts, when you ask a little-known fact, little-known fiction, it comes back with the little-known fact that Hillary Clinton was made president in 2016. That is very little known. It's true, but it's certainly not a fact.
Right. However, on the confidence front, I fed it some Mark Strassmann transcript, and I asked it if Mark got off a good one, and it confidently told me he in fact did, and it would go into detail. So it's not all bad. The robot's getting there.
But I saw that report. He did not, in fact, get off a good one, which is a judgment call that should not be made by the robots. And
Not a robot, it's just a dude.
yeah. Anyway.
If I kept feeding it like every week, if I find a Strassmann transcript, feed it, eventually it will say, no, that was fucking dog shit. That's what I want from the robot.
I do have a Strassmann tonight. We could do that now, I guess.
Look at that. Don't need no robot for this.
This is a longer piece. It's 5.5 minutes long. The version that shows up in the show, of course, I'll make sure that I take out all of the lengthy, pointless parts. But Strassmann went to a distillery in Kentucky and filed the following report. And by the way, the shitty network in-studio host gets in the way right away with his own trying to get off a good one here. It's not acceptable.
The Copel?
Mark learned about the distillery's history and why, when it comes to whiskey, age is more than just a number.
New Orleans has Bourbon Street, but this is Bourbon Heaven.
I would like to personally welcome you to the oldest continually operated distillery in the United States.
Maybe you don't know Jack Daniels about whiskey. Well, bourbon is a type of whiskey with a grain mash made of at least 51% corn. It's distilled, fermented, cooked, and aged in new charred oak barrels for up to 25 years, resting in warehouses like this one.
Barrels in a warehouse are just like real estate. Location, location, location.
It's a process, a collaboration between Mother Nature and Father Time. What's left after years of rest finally rolls out barrel after barrel, ready for the cork to be removed. I gave it a shot.
All right, now you got it.
Now I got it. I can work here.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
He's living proof of an old joke among whiskey lovers. Whatever the question, bourbon is the answer. For CBS Mornings, Mark Strassmann in Frankfort, Kentucky.
I'll toast to that.
All right. Quick note to the assholes in the studio who do the bumpers. If you're doing the bumper on a Strassmann hit, you got to come stronger than I'll toast to that. And whatever that was at the start about age is just a number. Like, come on, guys. This is Strassmann we're talking about here. The best of the best.
What if he's got a no-compete clause? I don't want anyone to overwhelm my quips.
So I guess there are a couple there. The best one probably being you don't know Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniels was pretty good.
Did Mark Strassmann, CBS News' senior national news correspondent, get off a good one?
Yes. That was a great segment.
Strassmann gets off a good one. Verdict is yes.
Nice little story.
Yeah, heartwarming. Slice of
Mother
life
Nature,
there.
Father Time, the pairing of the two. This guy's, he knows how to tell a story.
I don't know about that rowdy guitar lick that played under the entire thing for 5 minutes. It was way too much.
It was too
Not necessary.
upbeat.
Give us some bluegrass. It's Kentucky, right? Give us a little bluegrass.
Right.
Not that, whatever that was. All right. What else can we talk about tonight here?
That's it. Weird.
Let's talk a little bit about euphemism. Now, I will admit to sort of having become singularly focused in the last week on a topic that we talked about last week with this notion of social contagion. And I blogged about it on the website, a couple of lengthy-ish blogs about the subject. We don't have to go into that again, but I do recommend go check them out. A couple of good thoughts there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll hit on a little bit of that right now. But the reason that I want to bring up euphemism here is actually I'll just go ahead and play another clip because this was extremely funny to me. These are a couple of guys. I don't know how ChatGPT would describe their podcast, but they have a reasonable number of subscribers here. It looks like they're called the Juan
More than
Show.
ours?
What's that?
They have more subscribers than we do?
I don't like to look at our numbers, Abe. That's not what matters to me. That's not important at all. But this was amusing. It made its way around the internet a couple times this past week, so possibly you've heard this already, but I'm going to play it anyway.
It's been kind of eye-opening. I've just sort of randomly here and there picked up episodes of old shows that I hadn't watched in a long time from like the early 2000s, and just the casual the casual sort of gay humor, casual use of the hard R.
Oh, really?
It's jarring. Yeah, it's jarring now. And
Casual use of hard R.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, it was an episode of American Dad. And it was just
Really?
it wasn't for shock value. It was just like used.
Whoa.
Right? Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? That was in 2003 or something, like 2002.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna deny that I dropped my fair share of hard R's back then because we didn't the term hard R didn't even exist. We didn't think about it, right? And it's funny because to me, that doesn't feel like that long ago. But to my kids...
Are you talking like N-word hard R?
What? No.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that's how people use that term.
No.
I think
That's
so.
the N-word. What are you guys talking about? Am I mistaken?
I think so.
Yes.
No, the one with the for mental disability.
I'm pretty sure people use hard R in a very different way than you just used it.
Oh. Okay, either
Hard
way.
R means ending
I understand.
the N-word
I
with
understand.
a hard R.
I understand what you mean. No, I'm not talking about that. Okay, cool. So I'm glad that
I'm
we have
freaking
cleared that
Neo
up.
over here, dude. We're dodging bullets. That
Yeah.
was bad.
Okay, yes.
All right.
Thank you for that. Right. I forgot about the part where I said, yeah, I just used the cat. Yeah, no, actually.
That's what I was.
All right, we'll stop it there. That's a couple of very white bread Canadian fellas.
They sound Canadian.
Like 30-year-old bearded Canadian fellas. And I was greatly amused by that, largely because of the reaction of talker number 2 there. And the look on his face when the guy's like, yeah, I got to admit, me too.
I didn't know what he was talking about.
I mean, I knew the very first time I saw it,
Of course,
I knew.
you knew. You are on the internet constantly.
No. I just mean, because the video was presented to me just as, look at this funny thing without any of the details. But, the first time through, I was like, oh, he thinks that he's talking about retard, but he's really talking about the other one. And
Yeah. But, I have actually never heard it expressed that way because it's the N-word with a hard R. It's that's the full thing.
I thought he was talking about rape or something.
No. Oh, that would be something else. And for him to casually admit that back in the day, I mean rape people all the time.
Well, it's
there
funny.
were
It's
more rape jokes back in the
one
day,
way to say
no?
it, one way, because I also used to say retard as opposed to retard, right? As though I were being a little bit fancier and more delicate about it,
Yeah.
which it's not nice. It's fine, whatever, it's fine.
Right? Yeah. No, that's
But
it's
to
just,
me, if we're gonna make it no, man, not the hard R, it's the E. You instead of the long E, you go with the soft E, and that makes it not as offensive.
But had he just simply said the R word, more people, because he was kind of they would say something homophobic things, and then the hard R. If he just says the R word, people would closely associate it to that. But
for some reason, his brain did something funny where the neurons got crossed, and he's like, hard R equals this thing instead of this other thing,
And there's no soft R, right? It's not with the N-word where it could be said in a positive way or in a race, whatever, these distinctions, and that's why they say hard R.
Also, by the way, they've erased those distinctions, so it no longer matters, right?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Actually, did you see the newscaster who I guess had other issues, but she quoted a Snoop Dogg thing, for shizzle my nizzle, and the nizzle can also not be said anymore.
No, she got canceled over that.
I think that'd be pretty cool.
Before we know it, she'd have a Snoop Dogg tattoo on her shoulder.
For shizzle, my nizzle.
I'm telling you. Julie, what you think about that? Huh, she says.
Well, get this.
It was like an accumulation of other things. She said something else, like grandmammy, or she said some other, troubling things. But for shizzle, my nizzle put her over the top. And so, you can't even say... once removed.
There was that. Do you remember the fast food freestyle video from very early days of video on the internet, where these idiot kids go up to the drive-through and they rap their entire order to the guy behind the microphone? And
do you remember it?
I don't remember it specifically.
Oh, it's spectacular.
Sorry, we have to do
now.
that
Now we're just playing videos here on the
this is
podcast.
Better.
I wonder if it'll come
Everybody stop listening to the podcast and just go play on YouTube for 2 hours, apparently.
At one point, he says, for shizzle my nizzle, extra salt on the frizzle, which is why I bring it up here.
Okay.
Also, I'm not going to stop saying
no.
shizzle
Stop.
my nizzle is fine to say.
You don't say that So you can't.
No, I don't
stop
say it, but I'm allowed to
that.
say it.
No, you're not.
Right. I mean, I don't say it.
You're
like,
not allowed to say it regardless of anything.
I disagree. I can say what I want
Big
with regards to
Mac.
Snoop Dogg, but here we are.
Big Mac. Big Mac.
I need a double cheeseburger and hold the
Big
lettuce.
Mac.
Don't be frontin', son, no seeds on the
Big
bun. We
Mac.
be up in the drive-thru, order for
Big
two. I got a
Mac.
craving for a number 9, lock my
Big
shoe. We
Mac.
need some chicken up in here, in this
Big
sizzle.
Mac.
Or grizzle my mizzle, extra salt on the
Big
frizzle.
Mac.
Dr. Pepper, my brother, another for your
Big
mother.
Mac.
Double, super size, and don't forget the
Big Mac.
fries. That's about it.
I'm sorry, I only caught the double cheeseburger.
We'll slow it down for you.
Can you throw that down again?
Big Mac. Big Mac. Big Mac.
I need a double cheeseburger and hold the
Big
lettuce.
Mac.
Don't be frontin', son, no seeds on the
Big
bun. We
Mac.
be up in this drive-thru, order for
Big
two. I got the
Mac.
craving for a number 9, black my
Big
shoe. We need
Mac.
some chicken up in here, in this
Big
sizzle.
Mac.
A rizzle, my mizzle, extra salt on the
Big
frizzle.
Mac.
Dr. Pepper, my brother, another for your
Big
mother.
Mac.
Double, super size, and don't forget the
Big
fries.
Mac.
Go one more time.
Speed this one up.
Big Mac. Big Mac. Big Mac. Big Mac. Big
I
Mac.
need a double cheeseburger and hold the
Big
lettuce.
Mac.
Don't be frontin', son, no seeds on the
Big
bun. We
Mac.
be up in this drive-thru, order for
Big
two.
Mac.
I got the craving for a number 9, lock my
Big
shoe. We
Mac.
need some chicken up in here,
How about
in
you
this
say number
sizzle.
9, but what kind? Grilled or crispy?
Oh, you ruined the rap there.
You didn't tell me what you wanted. You said number 9. Number 9 what? We got grilled and crispy. And what to drink with it?
Sir.
Big Mac.
I got the Big Mac.
Big Mac. Big
I
Mac.
need a double cheeseburger and hold the
Big
lettuce.
Mac.
Don't be frontin', son, no seeds on the
Big
bun. We
Mac.
be up in this drive-thru, order for
Big
two.
Mac.
I got the craving for a number 9, lock my
Big
shoe.
Mac.
We need some chicken up in here, in this
Big
sizzle.
Mac.
Or rizzle my mizzle, extra salt on the
Big
frizzle.
Mac.
Dr. Pepper, my brother, another for
Big
your mother.
Mac.
Double, super size, and don't forget the
Big Mac.
fries.
An absolute classic of the early internet.
Christie.
After further review, I have watched this commercial.
Of course you have.
That's faux rizzle my mizzle, by the way. I screwed that up.
Okay.
He's just, that's my mother is what he's saying there, not the other one. So
I see.
I will continue to not say it, but say it
there
just
you
fine.
go. You continue to not say it.
All right. The point here being that even when talking in euphemism, you can find
Yes.
yourself getting in an extreme amount
Yes.
of trouble because euphemism doesn't actually save you from anything. And along those same lines, we have an op-ed. Actually, I don't even know if this is an op-ed. It was published in the Los Angeles Times because the Los Angeles Times has decided that they are going to cease using the word internment when they refer to what was done to Japanese Americans in World War II. Right? So in brief capsule history here for anyone who's not heard this story before. When the United States entered World War II against the Japanese, we made the dubious decision to collect all of the Japanese Americans, not just foreigners who were on American soil at the time, right? That's one thing, arguably, when you have foreign nationals and you're at war with another country and those people are in your country, maybe an argument can be made that those people should be collected and watched over. I'm not saying that's the right move. I'm just saying that's one thing. And then on the other hand, we have Japanese Americans, first, second, third generation people,
Right.
anybody with just even one drop of Japanese blood, as they might have said at the time in probably more offensive terms, they were going to be sent to these camps, often, I believe, in Idaho was where they ended up a lot of the time.
Because their loyalty to the country, America, could not be trusted. Is that like they can't figure it out? Like, even though you were here for generations, you're still, what? You swore allegiance to Japan? Like, I don't know what the argument was back in the day.
Right. Awful stain on American history and a shameful rebuke of our founding ideals and the laws of the land at the time. But, you know, you go to war and bad shit happens. And there's no excusing it. And at no point was I ever confused about the moral status of that in terms of how it was taught to me by my various teachers through the years. But in this article, they've decided, or they're announcing that they've decided they're going to stop using internment, and instead they're going to call them incarcerated or imprisoned. In the aftermath of Japan's 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor, they were imprisoned in an incarceration camp, not an internment camp. Internment, incarceration. Not many people make a distinction between the two terms or understand why it's so important to do so. But in a historic decision aimed at accuracy and reconciliation, the LA Times announced Thursday that it would drop the use of internment in most cases to describe the mass incarceration of 120,000 people of Japanese ancestry during World War II. Instead, the Times will generally use incarceration, imprisonment, detention, or their derivatives to describe this government action that shattered so many innocent lives. And this is apparently because internment is viewed as euphemistic language, that it's somehow hiding it's hiding the truth or the reality of the thing that happened. And in a sort of ironic way, the exact opposite is true for me because of the way I was taught and what that word meant. Internment always means, in the way that it was used growing up in my head, it always means the bad thing, right? It means unjustifiably the government came in and shoved all of these people in camps in the United States at the same time that I'm learning about Nazi death camps. And it, like, the worst thing that the Nazis did was that they collected people based on their fucking bloodlines and shoved them in camps, and then and then largely had an extermination or an experimentation or extermination project on them, and it ended in the deaths of 6 million Jews and other unfortunate minority types, right? So to me, the use of that word internment camp is a Nazi thing in my head that I'm learning about the United States government also did. If we now are going to rebrand this as an incarceration camp and to say that these people were in, you know what incarcerated means to me? It means that you did a crime and now you're in jail, right? Right. So what are we unless the plan is to further delegitimize or to further euphemize the word incarceration to mean something else that it doesn't mean, then all you're doing here, at least from my perspective, is you are now doing a euphemism in a way that takes away something that I learned when I was a kid that meant something very specific, and you're turning it into something else entirely. And you're changing the associations in a way that doesn't actually further explain anything. It doesn't make any, there's no more justice here. Am I getting something wrong here? Am I...
No. Okay. So when you're reading the justification, they were saying that they were trying to be more accurate, but this seems like they're less accurate because, if you just Google internment, right? The definition is the state of being confined as a prisoner, especially for political or military reasons. Like, this kind of fits like a glove to what happened, right?
Something that in my head I've always thought of as utterly morally unjustifiable. Even in times of war, arguably one of the most important lessons that I learned as a young person was that we don't do this because they're just as American as everybody else. That this is not a blood and soil country, right? That this is just, you're born here, you're an American, or in a great many hundreds of millions of cases, you decide to come here because you believe in the ideals of the nation, and we broke the promise to these people that they believed that they were coming to fulfill, right? That's what we did. We did the unjust thing, and I learned that, and that's what internment means to me.
That was my understanding too. So I don't know their thinking for why they did it, but they must think that internment does not have a negative enough connotation, or it's not used often enough so people don't know what you mean by it. And so we have this other word that's not as accurate because, again, like you said, it's usually, it implies that you did something to be incarcerated, right? When people say political prison, you have to add that political to kind of demonstrate that they're imprisoned for political reasons. But if you're saying incarcerated, or what were the other words that they were going to choose? That's not clear enough language, and you would have to kind of pair it with the Japanese detention. I don't know what combination of words would improve on the one word, which is the internment, right? It seems like that covers a lot of ground.
And even if it was originally a euphemism, right? If it was originally used euphemistically in the 1940s or something like that, that's gone now because of the way language changes and evolves. It means the awful thing. And it always has in the heads of everybody who's talked about it for generations now. And so now you're pretending like because of the way this was, I mean, that to me, that can be the only argument, that it was used as a euphemism originally to hide the true nature of what was going on. But even that seems like a stretch to me. Like there wasn't any question about what was going on here. They were taking Americans out of their homes and shipping them across the country to live in a fucking prison camp, right? It was awful.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know if there's anything more to say about that. It just strikes me as something that is very silly to do.
The one thing, especially in today's kind of like news cycle, in the past, from what I remember, there used to be some sort of inciting event that caused somebody, okay, that went terribly wrong. Let's now change course and do this other thing. Like, what prompted this switcheroo? Like, did some
maybe the interns?
Maybe that's. I don't know. Like, I wonder. Like,
maybe
what
there
caused
was a
them
Japanese intern in the office.
Well, there's mention
maybe,
throughout.
You know,
there's mention that this has been
yeah.
like various people's sort of agenda for quite some time. That this
Got a
is
lot of Japanese interns.
I don't know. I don't know why. And yeah, again, granted, this probably means a lot more to some people than to others, but to me.
But does it? I mean, you're talking about the same thing, right? So like, the only argument to change the word is that you're saying it's not strong enough. Like, this word is not strong
which,
enough.
by the way, which is not to say that this was made up for it, but didn't Ronald Reagan cut them? We came to terms on this in terms of reparations, in terms of an actual dollar figure back in the 80s, as I believe it was the Reagan administration.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1989. United States federal law that granted reparations to Japanese Americans who had been wrongly interned by the United States government during World War II. The Civil Liberties Act of 1988, and it was signed into law by President Ronald Reagan August 10th, 1988. So it's not to say that it made up for it, right?
Right.
But this is something that was litigated a very long time ago in terms of sort of a cultural reckoning around the subject. And I don't know.
And if you were to go ahead.
I was just going to say, I don't know what prompted this in particular. I assume that it has something to do with all of the Stop Anti-Asian Hate, probably that, like the sort of cloud of that's been brewing for the last couple of years. I assume it comes out of that.
I would love to see a poll asking just the general population, like, what is your association with the word internment? Like, I can't imagine it's positive or that it in any way dilutes the significant. Like, I don't know. To me, what are we doing? We
are creating harm, right? We are inventing harm where previously there had been none, right? Which is the exact same thing that goes on in this ridiculous CNN article that I sent you yesterday, which is headlined, "What's Digital Blackface and Why Is It Wrong When White People Use It?"
That is such a ridiculous argument. But I guess you can go ahead and set it up.
But it connects to the LA Times thing, right? Which is like, so.
Well, this one is just a whatever. Like, you're not improving on what we already have. But whatever, right? Another word for the same thing. If you're more comfortable using the other word, that's one thing. But
what I'm saying is that it imagines harm that is actually not there, right? That it is a way of claiming a trauma that you have invented for yourself. As like the use of the word internment is not a trauma to anyone, but that is the sort of language that will be used by the people who advocate for changing it from internment to incarceration. It's like somehow they've decided that the word internment is itself a trauma because it is euphemistic language for the thing that actually happened, even though it's not in anyone's heads, right? But they've decided that it is, and so now they're going to attempt to change the culture in this way. In the same way, the use of GIFs by white ladies is apparently problematic because it causes an unreasonable emotional burden or social burden on the backs of black people who are misused by white women on their GIF keyboard, right? Like, and I'm not making that up. This is straight out of the CNN article. Like, those are basically quotes.
And it's basically a lot of the GIFs that are like of a sassy nature, of I'm sure people have seen many of the same things that are kind of circulating. They're referring to those, right?
Right. So many white people choose images of black people when it comes to expressing exaggerated emotions on social media. A burden that black people didn't ask for, she says. We are your sass, your nonchalance, your fury, your delight, your annoyance, your happy dance, your diva, your shade, your yes moments, Jackson writes. The weight of reaction jiffing, period, rests on our shoulders. As though there's some sort of hard labor camp, an internment or incarceration camp, if you prefer, where we are demanding that black people go and perform this labor for all of the whites to benefit when they're texting the gif of Beyonce back and forth with their friends. Put simply, digital blackface is 21st century minstrelsy. It's the same thing. The same thing that you are doing now when you text that gif of Herman Cain looking guy slowly breaking into a smile.
Literally Herman Cain.
No, he just looks like Herman Cain. I refuse to believe that Herman Cain became a meme in that fashion. It must just be a Herman Cain lookalike.
It was literally during his presidential run, like, 999, and he did that slow developing smile.
That's fake news, Abe. It's fake news. Halford, a brand designer, wrote an apologetic essay in 2020 about how she made a meme out of Wilkins' "Ain't nobody got time for that" catchphrase and sent someone a gif of the singer Beyonce repeating, "I'm not bossy, I'm the boss." I have engaged in digital blackface, Halford wrote. I've laughed at people of color on the news facing horrifying crime and disaster and loss. That just makes you a bad person, okay?
Right, yeah.
When you watch somebody express their pain and you laugh at them.
Right. Also, what's the connection between using a GIF, which people it's a free-for-all. Use whatever's appropriate to the moment, right? I'm agnostic on it. I'll use anything, whatever fits, right? Mostly Simpsons-related stuff, but whatever, or Herman Cain. But that first point and I laugh at people's pain, those two are two different things.
Those
Why
are two very different things.
Not for everyone.
Also, once it is devoid of the context of the person, I'm sorry, but context matters, right? So I'm sorry that this person had a tough experience where they said these words, the hide your kids, hide your wife guy that became a meme for some time. No harm, material harm is done by sharing that as a joke in the future, right? And to suggest otherwise is ridiculous. And I recognize that. Oh, and by the way, last quote from the thing that I'll read. Halford says if she refrains from using any black memes, she runs into another problem. Those are the most effective because white people are so boring, she says.
Okay.
If you find yourself always reaching for a black face to release your inner sass monster, maybe consider going the extra country mile and pick this nice Taylor Swift gif instead. And there's a link to a Taylor Swift gif where she makes a sassy face, and that leaves us precisely one half step removed from somebody writing a response essay that says Taylor Swift is doing blackface by being sassy. Because we've come to expect in our cultural moment that sass is coded black, apparently, and therefore Taylor Swift is doing a racism here in some important way, which is ridiculous. But then again, so is all of this ridiculous. And obviously, I recognize that this was an article and a series of articles written precisely to make a large portion of the audience share it in somewhere between outrage and mock comic outrage that this is a thing at all.
Right. And there's no real, obviously it's a ridiculous point, but if you were to, make a real standard out of it, what does that mean? You can only use GIFs within your own, if you're a woman-related GIFs. If you're a man, don't use women. Is it just that? Compartmentalize all the GIFs?
Right. Well, otherwise, imagine the social contagion of allowing white people to use, because now they've just reduced them to this GIF. And if you don't interact with real black human beings on a daily basis, then now you're just stealing their culture again, rather than actually treating them as human beings. And then you'll be less likely to support true equality between the races or something, right? It requires this whole big, long, extended consequences tale that are not in keeping with anyone's actual life.
Right.
Whatever.
While we're in this ridiculous conversation, I don't use any of those things. I use the GIFs, but not emojis and the thumbs up, those kind of things. But let me ask you, anything that's like hand related, they have different shades.
Yeah.
And some of my friends will be like Indian,
Nitty does that.
brown skin, and they'll use like a very dark thing, and it's like, okay, and they have one that's like comparable to yours, but it's just like whatever, do whatever, it doesn't matter.
It's extraordinarily lame. Use the yellow one.
Use the yellow one.
Use the yellow one, not because it's white, but because it's Simpsons.
It's yellow.
It's just yellow. Yeah. It's fine. In the same way, and this is not exactly related, but I noticed last week, because we were talking about something, and I had to keep saying Democrat. We were talking about the Democrats in some way, and I had to catch myself saying Democrat Party or Democratic Party. And it's this bizarre thing where we live in such a stupid fucking time that if I force myself to say Democratic Party rather than like if I correct myself, because it's not like I'm doing it politically, but people believe that if I were to say Democrat Party, that is ideologically coded, right?
That's code, yeah.
If a Republican says Democratic Party, then they have failed to align themselves correctly with the people who are in their tribe, right? I should be permitted to just say Democratic Party and not feel like that is coded for
I don't know what you're talking about.
So Rush Limbaugh, I believe, is the one who popularized the issue. But he used to say Democrat Party rather than Democratic Party because it pissed off the Democrats, right?
Also, it ends in rat. And, there's been like commercials, if you see back in the day, where they would show the images of whatever the party, and then it would stand on rat for like half a second too long.
But it is, I mean, to defend, I don't know what I'm defending. It is confusing that we have a democracy and that you can have a democratic form of government, but then there's only one democratic party.
Right, and so that's
Same is true of a republic. Like, it's confusing.
Right, that's what they say. They say we don't want to make it sound like we're giving them ownership of democracy, and so we're going to call them
ownership of representative republics.
The Democrat Party. Like it sounds dumber.
Or
like it just does.
It sounds dumb.
Right?
It's
yeah,
wrong.
it just sounds stupid.
But
and
it's confusing.
But the point being is that it needles them, right?
So they should calm down.
When they hear someone say Democrat Party, it pisses them off, and so the Republicans are going to continue saying it. But the point is, there's a neutral description, which is they're the Democratic, capital D, capital P, Democratic Party. And that's just neutral, and I shouldn't feel like I'm doing an ideological side-taking when I just call them the neutral name. But we live in such stupid fucking times that no matter what, it's in my brain forever now that there's a difference and that I'm choosing a side, right?
But
and
the tiebreaker, the tiebreaker is like correctly using it, and you can actually use it in both ways. Like somebody can be a Democrat, just like somebody can be a member of the Democratic Party.
Right.
When it's being used incorrectly, that is the political spin, right? Like if you're deliberately using Democrat,
but when I say Democratic
apply.
Party, that says something to idiot conservatives who hear me say it, who think that I'm being unduly deferential to Democrats' concerns about the issue, right? That's how stupid it is.
Yeah, but if you say it the other way, it's being unduly deferential to them. So.
Right. I would. That's the thing is, I would never say on purpose, in a derisive way, certainly, Democrat Party. Right. I would never make that choice.
It's grammatically horrible.
Right.
No, but that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm talking about.
That actually matters.
Right. Yeah. I'm saying that they have managed to, in the same way that now every time I go to use a GIF, they will have incepted something into my head about like, is it a racism that's happening here? That I will try not to let it affect my behavior, but it's no longer just a neutral, non-political, non-ideological act to just behave in normal human ways, right? In the way that sending the yellow thumbs up is no longer going to be considered neutral because they've given us all of these other politically loaded options. And this is what I talked about in the first week of this stupid podcast, where everything is the culture war, everything is about Trump in stupid ways because of Donald Trump, because of what he's done, the poison that he inflicted upon us. everything becomes stupidly political and ideological in ways that neutrality is no longer accepted, right? And it manages to travel all the way down to what color thumbs up you're going to send to your friends in the group chat.
Right. I do think you're right with this expectation and what people take from, you know, the words that you use. But ultimately, going back to my laminate your principles, like if you're adhering to something that's correct, right, it shouldn't matter if somebody's going to take that in a bad way, right? I mean, there's nothing you can do about bad actors or somebody thinking, oh, you're on that side because you didn't say something in a contorted enough way to satisfy one political side, right? So, like, if you were saying something that's correct, then what else can you do? Like, there's no need to worry further.
Right. This is not me worrying about how my behavior is going to be or how I'll be perceived. Like, fuck all of you, right? Like, I don't care. I don't feel bad about the way that I am publicly in the world. It's not going to bother me. It's just that it is worth pointing out the stupidity of the times that we're living in, that this is the expectation of so many. Anyway, euphemism is no way to... Euphemism and then pretending that things are euphemistic when they are just good at communicating things is no way of dealing with the world.
This is similar to, you know, the internment thing and the euphemism and the using words in a, you know, with double meanings. In Boston, you know, one of these sports shows, there was some product that was called like nip, right? There's some sort of product called that in the Northeast.
Right.
And
so what this is you can go into the liquor store and you can buy either a regular bottle of liquor, 750 milliliters, or you can buy like the quart or the pint or whatever it is. And then those little airplane-sized bottles that you get when you go on the airplane, it's just like a shot, it's like an ounce and a half or whatever. They call those nips.
Right. And the show, the people on the show, there's like, I guess, two schmucks on the show, and they were doing like top 5, whatever. And the person was referring to an ESPN personality who's got Korean heritage, Mina Kimes, and he kind of made a reference to her using the alternate definition of that term, which is a derogatory term towards Asian people, specifically Japanese. So he got the country wrong, but he clearly meant it in that way. Like, and he kind of was playing it for laughs.
Right. So they're like listing their favorite nips or something, and he says, somebody says Jack Daniels, somebody says Wild Turkey, somebody says Mina Kimes. Right.
Right. And the joke is clear if you understand what you're saying, and then they try to pretend, oh, he meant something else he didn't know. And so, like, it didn't work, obviously. I think they kicked him off the show. But it's kind of one of those things where you have multiple meanings for the same thing. And then I guess certain things are regional because a lot of people online, maybe they were just saying it, but they're like, I never heard of this term. In Canada, it was a big thing. Like, you could never say that. Like, that was like that's like N-word level thing. If you said the N-word, it could go either way up there. But I guess down here, people are not familiar with it.
Those are mini bottles to me.
Yeah, but not to everybody.
And it's nipple, and that's all it is.
Right.
It's
to me,
nipple,
I thought
it.
like I always thought there was a half decent chance he was talking about like she's an unusually nipple forward person or something along those lines. But yeah, it seems like he was probably going for the racial undertone there.
There's no doubt. There's
also,
zero
it wouldn't
doubt.
be okay to say if it were the nipple thing either.
Right. Also not acceptable. Right. But yeah, at the same time though, like, what's the harm there? Like, what is the like? It's an impolite and gross thing to say, but like further, I just struggle finding the harm. Like, I know it's bad and he shouldn't have done it, but like this is where I start to really lose my mind about things are as bad or worse than they ever were before, right? All this talk about like race relations are worse than ever before, and it's not even that, because you can actually point to polls about like race relations have gotten, like, how people feel about the state of race, not actual race relations, right? But you poll Americans and you say, what do you think about the state of race relations in this country? And it's a steady, things are getting better, things are getting better, things are getting better. And then 2014 happens, And it's like we basically have Trayvon and Michael Brown, and
Ferguson was the main one. Yeah.
Right, and the fact that Ferguson is based on a lie or a misunderstanding of what actually happened there doesn't fucking matter. You're just a racist if you bring that up. By the way, the fact that that hands up don't shoot was just a weird marketing ploy that was not actually true, but became a meme.
In that instance, the reason why it holds, the reason why people stick to it is because they're like, oh, just substitute this incident for another, even though that doesn't work.
Right, it doesn't mean that. Right. Yeah, sure. There are other anecdotes where
people were
there are
unarmed and they
other
were
anecdotes
shot,
where it absolutely applies,
Right.
Of course.
Just
but
not-
in that case, the fact that it became the fuse that lit the match that resulted in where we are now, right? Because you can get to 2014 and you watch the polls for what do you think about race related, not what do you think about black people or what do you think about whites or what do you think about Asians, right? We're largely self-reported, not very racist, obviously, as you would expect. But in terms of what do you think about the state of race relations in America, things have only gotten worse over the course of the last decade since we started having this very important conversation on race. And like, you're out of your fucking mind if you think that the asshole, the shock jock sports idiot on Boston Sports Talk Radio letting a casual racial slur go on air means that shit's worse now than it was 40 years ago. Like it's fucking insane.
Yeah, I think definitely the perception, I can see that number dipping because of the coverage and the discourse and the way things are talked about. But I'm sure if you apply other standards, interactions that people have, interracial marriage numbers going up, I mean, a lot of these other indicators.
Right, but instead we have to invent
story.
digital blackface as a thing instead of just accepting progress and that things are probably getting better on a human-to-human level. You have to reimagine the world as a trauma-filled place, and that every white lady's GIF keyboard is a representation of white supremacy. It's fucking ridiculous. Do we have anything to say about the school shooting that happened today? 3 dead kids, 3 dead teachers.
Oh, it's interesting that it's a woman. That's the only thing.
All right, so Lori's canceled. I'm sorry to say it, but
Interesting that it's a woman.
you did it again. This is
more information.
It's a Monty Python bit we're doing here. She said it again. There was brief early coverage on this, including a New York Times article that I saw and made sure that I downloaded right away because I knew that it was going to be changed and probably deleted, that noted the strange fact that the mass shooter was a woman. I'm sorry, I'm pulling this up now. So the headline from the Times piece said, "It is rare for a woman to commit a mass shooting. In a database of 172 U.S. shootings involving at least 4 victims over the last 5.5 decades, only 4 of the perpetrators were female." And that is including this reference to the one from today. Female assailants in mass shootings in the United States, like the one that occurred on Monday in Nashville, are extremely rare, according to the Violence Project, which maintains a national database of mass shootings dating to 1966. Then there was the update where they took out that clause that says, like the one today, and they've deleted most of the article and instead replaced it with this sentence. "There was confusion about the gender identity of the assailant in Nashville. Kristen Mumford, a police spokeswoman, said the suspect was born female but listed male pronouns on a LinkedIn profile, which suggested that the suspect was a transgender man."
That's even more rare, probably.
Right. I certainly don't want to say that transgender men are now disproportionately represented in as mass shooters. That would be terrible.
Just to be clear, so born a woman identifies as a man?
Born a woman, but on their LinkedIn profile apparently identifies as a man, yes.
Okay. And also, one of the other, this is like one of 4 such things where a woman was involved. Are they counting that, is this San Bernardino? Wasn't it like a husband-wife thing? Like how many lone women incidents have there been? It is a very rare thing. You never hear this. It's always some dude of like a certain age.
And the Times even since has now changed the headline on the piece it goes from "it is rare for a woman to commit a mass shooting" is how it was originally presented, where the name of this article is now changed to "most mass shooting suspects are male." So,
but I guess maybe their concern was that there were, with the first version, there's like an implication that women are like unwilling or incapable or some other thing about their being a woman is preventing them from doing this. And the second one is just statistically, most of the time, it's not that. Like,
right.
And that's a little more neutral.
This will be a completely intolerable news cycle. That is my prediction for this, which is like, you'll remember the feeling that you used to get when a bad thing would happen. And oftentimes, this is probably a brain poison of a certain type of person. But when a mass shooting happens, the thought runs through your head, is this Islamic terrorism? Is this lone wolf, crazy right-wing white dude type shit? Like, what is it? And now we're going to be living in a situation where if a Christian school gets shot up, there will be a collective holding of breath until we find out the various gender identities at play here, right? Like that will be somehow now part of this sort of narrative. And this is going to be, I mean, the fact that everybody immediately leaps to gun control, right? Like, which is an understandable sort of thing, but like, I don't know where it gets you in moments like this. I'm not sure what it matters. This is an awful trend. 3 9-year-olds and 3 60-year-olds are dead because this obviously disturbed individual shot their way through the side door. All the doors were locked. Locked doors don't matter.
Yeah, that's the troubling thing, right? I mean, a lot of the things that you want to work did work, and still 6 people died. You know, it was a secure location. You know, the building was secure. Oh, you got a gun, shoot your way in. Police responded very fast, and they did not do the Uvalde cowardly thing. They engaged immediately, and you know, maybe it could have been more than 6 deaths, but like still, people, if you have the intent, you have the element of surprise. In this case, I don't know if the story has changed, but this person the shooter went to the school, so they're familiar already with the layout. They had like information at their home, so they basically knew how to kind of navigate their way.
Right.
And in these kind of cases, I'm not sure what more you can do because, yes, they use the assault style rifle, but like if you had like something lower than that, none of those kids and teachers are in any position to defend themselves, you know. So they probably couldn't.
I don't care if it's buckshot, right? If you go into a goddamn kindergarten classroom with your hunting shotgun, like you're gonna do some awful damage until the police get there. Like I get it. Like I am actually sympathetic to the various arguments about the AR-15 and how it just has no function in a civilized goddamn society. I agree with you. It's fucking super disturbing to me, the ubiquity and popularity of that particular gun in terms of what it says about our society. But I don't know that you like. It's just a harm mitigation effort. It's not a solution, right? And there are no solutions. Largely.
And just to be clear, I would be in favor of kind of limiting access to the AR or assault style rifles because, as we have learned from the Uvalde cowards situation, they did not engage specifically because the guns that they were using would overwhelm them, right? So like if this was just a regular gun, they would have been more comfortable engaging with the number of people that they had.
That's what they said anyway. That's what the cowards said at the time. That I don't put very much stock in that personally, but
in
whatever.
any event, you don't think that tracks with their resistance? I mean, what other reason would they not engage? They're like, because there were
the failure
to
have local ability to respond to this sort of thing, where the armored ballistic shielding that they were after was an hour away, and that's what they were waiting for. That's a failure of organization and bureaucracy largely. And
especially after what happened in Columbine. Basically, everything changed. Like you're supposed to engage immediately because time is of the essence.
Right.
But yeah, in this case, like I said, the reason why I say if the shooter wanted to, they could have done a lot of damage, or the same damage with other types of weapons. I only say that because any efforts to kind of limit the access to weapons, even let's say if everything passed, everybody was on the same page, there would still be these kind of situations, right? It won't be as bad as Vegas or the Pulse nightclub and Uvalde, but these kind of targeted, I want this specific school to be targeted and I'm going to go at a time of my choosing, those are almost impossible to prevent. Those are almost like I got a car and at an opportune time swerve and mow down 10 people. Like there are certain things where it's kind of hard to defend against, unfortunately.
I've said all I need to say about this one, which is just that the discourse is going to be awful because the right wingers are going to be awful about this, and
that's not new fun. So
it's not terribly new.
It's not, but it is noteworthy that the don't politicize that when it's going against my argument now are going to politicize it because they found an angle to attack to say, there's some sort of persecution.
It's 10:20 now. We could go to bed.
We're getting there. Real quick, Agatha Christie has been subject to the same sort of things that we've talked about in the past with regard to Roald Dahl and Ian Fleming, the James Bond books. I don't think that there's a lot more to say, but this one's slightly interesting because the famous Agatha Christie novel that I read growing up, the copy that I had was called
not called that.
10 Little Indians.
Oh.
And then it was called And Then There Were None. So
that's the one I read.
Those were a couple different versions of it.
I'm aware of it in that second way. I did not know the original.
The original, no, that's not. 10 Little Indians is not the original title. That was how it was published in the United States. But I always knew it was called 10 Little Indians. I can't possibly have had like a UK printing of this.
No, it was called that here.
Right, but
and like libraries had old. I mean, we grew up in the 80s.
Right, I knew that it was 10 Little.
Still super racist then.
I knew that it was 10 Little Indians. What I did not know, at least when I was a child, this is something that I would learn later, is that in the UK when it was originally published, it was published as 10 Little Niggers.
Woo!
No kidding.
Yes, not a nice
what
phrasing.
year was this?
This was like 1940 something. Let me pull that up.
I don't think there are any black characters in the book either.
No, because it was based around the nursery rhyme, which is not a very nice nursery rhyme ultimately. All right, so this is a 1939 novel by Agatha Christie. I'll make sure there's a link in the show notes to the rather unfortunate cover page if you want to have your delicate sensibilities offended. There it is. And
look at that.
It was first published in the UK by the Collins Crime Club in November 1939 as 10 Little Niggers. After the children's counting rhyme and minstrel song, which serves as a major plot element, the U.S. edition was released in 1940 with the title And Then There Were None, taken from the last 5 words of the song. Successive American reprints and adaptations use that title, though pocketbooks paperbacks used the title 10 Little Indians from 1964 to 86, which is the version that I read as a kid, was the 10 Little Indians one. But yeah, it's based on this rather unfortunate rhyme, which in the...
Put them in a boat and send them down the river.
In the updated version has been changed to 10 Little Soldier Boys. Anyway,
fuck cops.
It's interesting because obviously this is something that as early as 1940 was already having its most offensive parts excised out in favor of less offensive language. But they're going through apparently her entire back catalog to make sure that it more correctly coheres to today's modern standards. And again, it's the same fucking thing I'll say every fucking time, which is it does no one any good to not be able to read one of the most popular novelists in the history of the form as it was originally published and as it came to popularity, because once you're reading something that was written 100 goddamn years ago, as interesting as it might be as it, on its own as a work of art, it is arguably more important regarded as an historical document and as a document of the culture at the time, and not just strictly on its own terms anymore. It is still interesting to approach it on its own terms, but it must be further interacted with in the context of the time that it came from, and stripping the offensive language out of it further strips it out of its context, and it's not okay.
I will say, though, good move on changing that, because it would not have had the staying power that And Then There Were None had, right? I mean, yes, in theory, you would want the original product to kind of, because the content is still the same, I assume. It's not like they cut off a chapter's worth of stuff.
No, it's all the same inside.
Right?
Yeah.
So everything's on the inside, but just they say don't judge a book by its cover, but that is a pretty rough title to encourage somebody to, hey, what are you reading? Because of a new beach read?
Also,
yeah.
And Then There Were None is just a terrific title on its own merits, right? It's a great title, and it is thematically relevant to the work. I don't know if you've ever read Agatha Christie, but I have
read that. I think I've read a couple.
Watch Clue instead. Don't bother reading.
Yeah.
Just watch Clue. It's great.
You've been listening to Cast Iron Brains, a podcast with Bob and Abe. You can find the show on Facebook or Twitter. Head on over to brainiron.com, castironbrains.com for a show note. And, of course, the blog, where I am still blogging regularly. Good stuff there this past week. Hopefully good stuff to come. I was going to blog today, but I realized that I was going to find myself blogging again about the thing that I had blogged about twice last week, and that's no way to do it. I need to move on. It can't just be an ongoing conversation about the same things. Although I do want to say here about the social contagion thing, just to get this off my chest and therefore out of my brain, hopefully.
That didn't work before.
I've been complaining about this social contagion thing now for a week, and I still haven't gotten to sort of the ultimate point, which is that mostly this worry about consequences when we're trying to control the thoughts and language of other people, because it is such a fool's errand, because it will not ultimately have the impact that you want it to have in terms of preventing negative outcomes from coming to fruition in the world. It's ultimately just an expression of your own personal morality, right? It's just a way for you to express your standing in opposition to things that you disagree with. Right. And that's fine, but it's ultimately just a big sort of happy virtue signal, and therefore not even properly consequentialist. Because if you're really trying to deal with consequences, then you will account for the fact that this action that you're taking won't have the intended consequences that you want it to, and probably just results in the sort of shitty world that we've been living in for the last few years. And yeah, I get it. As an act of your own personal public morality, it probably feels good, but it's not ultimately the thing that you want it to be. Right,
because it's in the end counterproductive. If you kind of think of discourse as like a ecosystem, it's unhealthy, that approach, because it kind of it's a very corrosive thing to do, because you're just going to drive people further away. These are the only ways to go about doing something, and if you don't already agree, I'm not even going to try to convince you, right? That's not even a thing. Try to, hey, do you see it this way or that way? It's just this is assumed to be true, and you're either in the right or in the wrong. You're not really winning people over with that strategy. So, what is the point? It's not a harmless exercise, right? You're saying virtue signaling, it's actively harmful, because people are just going to say, well, fuck you then, and I'll, follow some other line of argument, which is generally worse. The people who are pursuing this generally have the right ideas, but their approach is wrong. And so if you drive people away to say you're no different than those other people, then what does that do? You're just
and this
driving
is something... Right. And it's something I've been complaining about for as long as I can remember interacting with media, right? It's sort of my personal thing. And I get accused of being pedantic about this sort of thing, and of not actually caring about any of the issues and just worrying about how people are talking to each other. But I just ask you to look around. Like just the world that we're living in my opinion, is predicted by my concern about this very thing that I have been expressing publicly for as long as I've been an adult person, right? For as long as I was sitting in a philosophy class in 2001 or 2002. Like, it's just, we have done serious harm with the way that we conduct ourselves with our public rhetoric.
The only thing I will say, though, is that I'm not sure how much control each one person has. You know, like the actor from The Wire, Idris Elba, he was quoted as saying, like, I would just rather not be known as an actor and not like as a black actor. What's with the qualifier? And people were like, oh, you're denying your blackness, blah, 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 you know, nonsense stuff. And he characterized the social media nonsense as like, it's like a conflict incubator, right? Like, the system is designed just to just engage in conflict and promote conflict and nothing but conflict. So the one thing I will say is that you are right, but I'm not sure if it's like a individual choice. Basically, it's just this thing beyond any one person's control, and people are it's kind of irresistible. Like, they have to
I recognize that, but also go to the blog and read the ones with the obnoxious titles about the humble bloggist or whatever I called them. And like, I provide a number of examples, and the point of providing examples is that at each step along the way, a person has a choice to engage in the sort of thing that I'm pointing to or not, right? And I recognize that I mean, it's a silly thing, but the culture is just all of the choices that each individual makes as collectively understood. So, yes, it's a systemic problem, but also you can choose to do better, and please do so. Also, the opening and closing themes of the show were composed by Mark Gillig. Check him out at tetramermusic.com, TETRAMER music.com. Abe, John Wick 4 made a big pile of money this week, although notably, basically the same pile of money that Shazam 2 made. But Shazam 2, giant failure. But John Wick 4,
How did they make the same? Didn't Shazam 2 make 30 million barely, and John Wick 4 made over 70 million? It wasn't even close.
In the first weekend? I thought it was the first weekend was only like 30 million.
Oh, not like Friday. Are you kidding me? By the way.
Oh, John Wick on Friday alone?
I have an unofficial calculation that I determined based on my local theater on Thursday night, the evening preview, you know, the night before opening day. And based on not only the crowd size, but the engagement, I can tell whether something's going to work or not. And immediately I was like, this movie is going to make... The only thing that's holding it back is the R rating. But this movie, it was like... what was that Tom Cruise, Top Gun 2 level? I was like, holy shit, these people are really into... People just getting killed. Like, there were at least 300
packed
people.
Too? Was it?
It was packed, and people were just all about it. It was a lot of fun. The movie plays just like the first three, but... Probably it's the most John Wick of the John Wick movies. It is just all out John Wick, and it plays like a live action video game. Like, in fact, some of the extras behave as if they're not actually real. Like, there was a scene where there was a fight sequence. There are a lot of fight sequences, by the way, in a dance club, like in Germany or whatever, and all of the extras are just flailing their arms as if they're dancing to the music, but they're not dancing with the person they're in front of. They're just kind of everybody's in their own world.
So they did a literal non-playable character thing.
Literally that. And there would be occasions where like somebody would bump into you, like if you're a non-playing character, and you'll like look back and you go back to just flailing your arms. Literally like a video game. It was
while
ridiculous.
Everybody else in the club is getting shot up or what have you.
Stab, shot. It is chaos. No one is afraid for their lives. No one's like, maybe I should seek shelter.
So this movie's pushing 3 hours, right? Is it drag?
No, there's no drag, but it's, again, going back to the video game comparison, it is like to fight the final boss, you have to go through these obstacles first. So they send them like random assassins. Hey, there's a bounty, 20 million. Let's make it 30 million. And now like so taxi drivers in on it. Any bum or person who didn't have a house is in on it. Everybody is in on it, and the one thing I will say,
you said the big fucking number. Congratulations! Now everybody's going to try to kill him.
But what's weird is that the people, you know, they tell you they're doing this obviously for the money, but they behave like zombies, like, you know, Last of Us zombies or your typical zombie movie zombies. Because it'd be nice to make $20 million, but when John Wick is just like beating the shit out of you, or you see your friend getting like shot, like, all right, what am I gonna do with this money, like with a broken leg, right? I would disengage. But they are pursuing John Wick as if they're zombies, like he's got like brain that they want to eat. It's very weird. And also,
But
there's
good movie?
It's a good
Guess
movie. One last thing I'll say is, and this may be a controversial opinion, but this movie, the first one had the dog thing where they killed the dog. Nobody liked that.
Right.
In the fourth one, there's an assassin who has like a dog, and he would sick him. I go bite that guy in the nuts, and then I'll shoot him, and we'll make a great team. And I'm like, okay, now this is not like an innocent dog. This dog is participating.
Right. This dog
this.
can be put down. Yeah.
And
This dog is fair play.
Despite all the carnage and mayhem, this is a popcorn kind of movie. Everybody just body energy, everybody's relaxed, eating their food, enjoying the ride. But anytime it came close to like, is this dog gonna get stabbed or shot? Everybody's concerned. And I'm like, no. This is not like the first one. This dog is fair game. Stab this dog.
Dog's
Get rid of this dog.
Sad.
Because at the end, this was uncalled for. After one of the kills, he pees on one of the bad guys. Like, that's fucked up. Again, in John Wick 5, that dog's got to get his. But otherwise, a great movie.
Oh, good. Anything else that you saw?
I saw it at home Dog Day Afternoon. It was a lot of fun. It was a totally different movie than John Wick 4. I don't know. It's probably because they only show you the good movies from the 70s, but like everything from the 70s seems to be good. Like they did a lot of good movies from the 70s. Every movie that I've seen, maybe it's HBO's curation, but
I think probably that's it. Yeah, but
I'm like, wow,
you're watching the good one.
there was a lot of dog shit in the 1970s. Let's see. Lori was gone. I watched the Two Towers. I've been watching the Lord of the Rings extended editions because they're on HBO Max, so I can just kind of flip them on when I'm making dinner, or otherwise like folding laundry or something. And so I watched about a month ago. I probably started this, and I got through Fellowship, and now I've gotten through Two Towers. I had forgotten how good those movies are compared to a lot of the other schlock that's come through in terms of these big blockbuster sort of fantasy or comic book movies. The first one especially is just so fucking good. And I'm into Return of the King now too, and that's also good. And there's something about these enormous characters that have fucking drive and sincerity of purpose that just feels so completely out of left field now after 20 years of Marvel. And the sort of detached irony of comic book movies in general, which is a fun attitude at times, right? But when it becomes the whole fucking culture, like when it becomes everything, it's a absolute breath of fresh air to have actual characters treating the things that they want, to have these enormous stakes, and to have everyone involved treating it with absolute sincerity. It doesn't mean, like, I love detached irony as a response to overwhelming sincerity, but when it's just constant detached irony, and the stakes don't fucking matter at all, then it becomes incredibly pointless and tiresome. But to go back to the Lord of the Rings again, after all this time, has been sort of almost shockingly rewarding emotionally. Like the first one is an incredibly touching movie, and part of it is just that a lot of the dialogue is written by fucking Tolkien, like a great writer, right? Like these are stories that were written by a master operating at the absolute top of his craft, and then adapted by somebody who cared a great deal about it. And it's just been great. I love these movies. I can't wait to share them with the kids. And part of the reason for the rewatch is to see, like, are these movies that I could show to my kids at this point? And I think mostly the answer is yes. Like they're violent.
They're very boring.
But mostly they're long and boring, as Laurie would say.
Very intensely boring.
I just completely disagree with that. I think
it doesn't mean it. They're so boring.
I think that they are incredibly engaging, and I think that the kids are just about at the right age for them, and we're going to do that now. There's some spooky, like the orcs are fucking terrible to look at, right? Like there's no getting, they're just disgusting and scary monster type things. But besides that, like I think they can basically handle all of it.
Laurie, you call these movies boring. So I've seen the first two in theaters, and I was holding out for Return of the King for it to return to the theaters. And what do you know? It's 2023, 20-year anniversary. and next month they're going to release the Return of the King, but they're not releasing the original cut. The
4-hour one.
4 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah, like 4:27, I think, with the credits.
Yeah, buckle in.
Yeah, I'll still watch it, but that's a lot. That's the most. I don't think I've ever sat through 4 hours.
It's a long movie. I went and saw Return of the King at the midnight showing when it came out the first time, as I recall, and that version was only like 3 hours and 10 minutes or something. But the extended version is 4.5 hours, but well worth it. There's good stuff in the extra scenes that they include. I also watched a movie that I've been wanting to watch for a very long time called The Lobster. I finally got around to it.
Oh, how was it with Colin Farrell?
Yeah, Colin Farrell's in it, and Rachel Weisz, and a couple other faces that you recognize, and then you have to Google them up and see what else you've seen them in. It was weird and wonderful, and I'm mad at myself for not having watched it when
I'm a little mad at you for watching it without me, but whatever.
Yeah, well, it's been on my radar for 7 years or whatever it's been since it first came out, and I've finally now gotten around to it, and it was great. It's super fucking weird. It is.
It's on HBO, right?
It's on HBO.
I like weird movies.
Yeah.
It's a good thing you didn't watch those war movies that I don't want to watch, or your fucking Ernest Hemingway documentary. I went away for 2 weeks, and you watch one of the movies that I wanted to watch.
Well,
it's fine.
We can watch it anytime. I will gladly watch it again because it is just that weird.
It's just you're just a bad person.
And then, of course, we had to start the television again because HBO brought back season 4 of Succession. Abe, did you catch the first episode of season 4?
I did. I very much enjoyed the first 2 seasons. I thought the third season was kind of a drag because it just kind of nothing was happening. You know, the second season ended like, hey, we're going to go after old man, and then nothing happened in the third season. And now they're saying this is the final season, so I assume just things will happen. And I look forward to that. I thought the first one was pretty decent.
In terms of plot, this show's got nothing. It's the same fucking shit.
It is, but that's why it's good that they're ending it, right? Because
it's good that they're ending it. So that's my large complaint about the show is that it's about almost nothing. It's about this one thing, and that's fine. It's fine for a show to be about one thing. But it's the same fucking thing all the time, and I'm just sort of bored with it.
Well, they are too.
But they keep you engaged with some of the best dialogue writing in the history of the medium, right? Like the dialogue is just fucking spectacular, and it's believable because these are all. Because of the class of people that we're talking about here, like the things that they say and the fact that these are the people saying them, like would these people actually in real life be slightly dumber? Probably. But Kendall is pretty fucking dumb. And like they are perfectly willing to show the vapidity and the stupidity of these people in a way that a lot of other shows that aren't just straight comedies aren't interested in doing.
But it's weird that every sibling is like a different flavor of awful. Like the presidential candidate guy is like, 100 million to keep me above the 1. I don't want to get bogged down below 1%. You know,
want to stay in. You don't want to be embarrassed and get less than 1% of the vote for your independent presidential run that cost you $200 million. They do very good individual character work, right? They're very, very good at letting you know what's going on with these characters and making sure that they're all sort of individually, meticulously drawn, all the way down to that character that you're talking about who's a nothing character, but his fiance, like they give these characters just, even if it's just 30 or 45 seconds in an episode, like she's this woman. She was an escort of some sort, like a high-priced call girl type thing, who becomes his fiance after being a longtime girlfriend, and so she sold herself to this man over and over again for years and years and years, and now they're going to get married. And she knows what she's doing, right? Like she knows the score here. She knows that in some ways she's still the same hooker that she was when she first got with him, but at least she's going to have this big, beautiful wedding. And what they do in this episode is he comes to her and is like, what if we have bum fights during the wedding just to generate some social, like instead of this beautiful, instead of this beautiful, like 1% of 1% 50% billionaire class wedding where I make you the princess that you always dreamed you were going to be?
Right.
What if instead we just try to go viral for the free media coverage that will come with it shortly before the presidential election? And she has to consider that, right? Like, she has to consider that now she also has to sell her hopes and dreams about having a beautiful princess wedding and instead let Connor have his stupid fucking bum fight wedding. And that's the sort of thing that they do very, very well, which is just in this one moment, you do character work on somebody who largely is a meaningless part of this show.
Right.
And that I appreciate, but otherwise it's still just fucking television, and they're just doing the same fucking thing for an hour a week, every week for the next 10 weeks. But yeah, fine. Good show. Thumbs up. We'll keep watching it because it's so entertainingly
also because
done.
it's on HBO at 9 o'clock on Sundays.
Yeah, that certainly helps. Anyway, Abe, you got anything else for us tonight?
Nope.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for tonight then. We will talk to you next time.
Later. This is nothing related with the news, but over the weekend, I went to some cherry blossom music fest, just like a family friendly thing. So one half of the park had kid stuff, and the other half they had some one hit wonder acts. They had a band of horses and Hanson and some other whatever act.
Hanson? No shit.
Hanson was there. It
saw
rained out, so I
Hanson,
didn't catch their bop, right?
Oh,
but
too
on
bad.
the kid side, there are different slides and different little things for kids to kind of run around and play with. And one thing stood out. There is this big sinking ship, and I could see this from the parking lot. And I'm like, that's the Titanic, without even seeing the sign saying Titanic.
Right.
And then as I get closer, it is indeed the Titanic, and I'm like, oh, that's neat. And I get closer, and it's a slide. It's kids are just having. I was like,
You slide down the Titanic.
I've never seen that. Didn't people die on this thing? This is. I'm not to be some worry
but
ward,
not
but
that exact one. That's just a replica.
just weird that they're wee. You could paint anything else. Why the Titanic?
You're going to need to write a letter and talk about how this is deeply offensive
1,500 people, including
to the
Jack.
memories of.
So long ago.
By the way,
they're all dead anyway.
the disproportionate number of the dead were of minority status at the time.
They were white. They were
lower
Irish.
class.
No, they would have been Irish and Italian, the poor Irish and Italian in the steerage class who died. They would have been people of color
Right.
at
Yeah,
the
they
time.
weren't white back then, right?
They were all white.
Not back then, but
Now they're white, but this is deeply offensive. The thing that I forgot to mention was they come up with this number that in excess of 80% of Americans hold at least one anti-Jewish belief in their hearts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that some excessive number hold 6 or more of these
wow.
to be true. The first one, 70% of Americans agree with the statement, Jews stick together more than other Americans. And they classify that as something
That's
negative.
a pretty weird thing. But is that even true? What is that? I don't understand that.
Probably
If
not.
you were to say that about, but here's the point of what I'm saying here. So they would say that this counts as one of the things that give people a negative stereotype about Jewish people. I don't believe that the average person answering that question would answer it any differently about any other group, right? Do you believe that Asian Americans stick together more than other Americans? Yeah, sure. Do you believe that Black Americans stick together more than other Americans? You are preloading into this conversation this divisive notion. And also, to stick together is not an inherently negative trait.
What are the other
It is
ones?
you who are doing the bad thing by pretending that Jew is different than American.